So this bit, it's very early on, and it's when the two of the main characters are first meeting, and one of them is quite badly wounded and has sought sanctuary from a very unwilling village in the marshes. Marshes are, by definition, unwilling. They don't want to get involved. However, someone has decided that they will this time. There was scarcely room for them all in the building, but the warmth of the forge fire was wonderful. Maeve basked as the steam rose from her clothes, but she did not drop her guard. Tegan was equally grateful for the warmth and for the woman who examined her wound. "You'll live, provided you stay still and warm," Edra said at last, and began to rebind the sword wound. "You're lucky. There's no serious damage. Infection and exhaustion are the dangers here." She turned to Fane. "Are we keeping her then?" Fane gave Tegan a long look, aware of the tension in all those around her, waiting for her final decision. Then she nodded firmly. Tegan let out her held breath. But for Fane's word, infection and exhaustion would be her fate. She snagged Maeve's hand as she passed, tugging her down. "I'll be safe here," she whispered. Maeve put aside the temptation to shake her into caution. "We may have no choice but to leave you here," she said, "but we are still in enemy territory." Breed, lounging in the doorway, was indignant. "If we'd wished you harm," she said, "we'd have left you where you were. The river would have swept you away by morning." Maeve bowed in acknowledgement and nodded silently at her companions. They stripped away their outermost garments, spreading them in dripping curtains wherever they could find space. Breed drank in newness, strangeness, variety. The warriors all had a hungry look about them, faces sharper than they should be. Breed tried not to categorise them, but she was giddy with newness. Maeve was the most striking. She was tall, and not as slight as she had first appeared. More wiry than slender, her skin was unnaturally pale, freckled, giving an impression of constantly moving sunlight on her face. She was difficult to look at, full of movement and sharp angles. Maeve glanced up and caught Breed's eye upon her. "Trouble," she thought, wearily. She frowned, distracted. She was afraid for Tegan, and would miss her assurance, her good sense, her warmth at night. At least she could hope she wouldn't lose Tegan this way, as she would have, if they had continued to struggle eastward through uncertain territory in ever-worsening conditions. Breed pressed warm bread into Maeve's hand. Maeve took it, observing a strength of feature which Breed did not share with her kin, and a carelessness, her dark hair tied in a loose braid that did not serve to keep her eyes clear. Breed's keen, dark eyes made her uncomfortable, darting about, following every movement. Maeve made a small adjustment to her assumptions about marsh dwellers, and remembered what Fane had said when Tegan thanked her for her hospitality. "I'm not doing this for you." She was relieved when Fane came to beckon Breed away. Breed went reluctantly, allowing herself another check on the horses. Perhaps her mother would like to see them? She rejected the possibility. Leal would not want to be reminded that she had once been entranced by movement and uncertainty, that she had once lost her heart to a plains rider. And this was no time to be thinking of Devnet. Breed returned home, intending to be a gracious and dutiful daughter. But her gentle kiss went unacknowledged, her greeting unanswered. She settled the other side of the smoky fire, her eyes smarting, and delved in the pot of stew hung over the flames. Leal watched her daughter, and was afraid for the first time since returning to the safety of her birthplace. She wanted to scream at Breed. "You know what happens when you go. You know something terrible always happens. Don't leave me again." Memories of that terrible time brought Leal to thoughts of Devnet, and her anxiety spilt into accusation. "I suppose you find one of these warriors attractive?" Breed put her bowl aside, her stomach tightening into revolt. "Dear goddess," she thought, "I don't believe we're going to fight about this now." "In what way?" she asked. "Like Devnet?" Breed considered. She was tempted to agree, to say, "Yes, Leal, there's a stunning redhead." They're leaving tomorrow, she said instead. And what will you do? What the elders ask of me. Lil snorted and struck out again. Why aren't you more like your sister? Fowder's dead, Breed said, her voice barely under control. Lil recoiled but went on. Why couldn't you have hand-fast and had babies? Why couldn't you be a real daughter? I take after my father, Breed snapped, a phrase often used to cover what made her different from her mother, a disappointment, a problem. She unfolded her legs and went out into the cold night air. Lil regretted her temper at once, and she was out into the rain almost as swiftly as Breed. There was no sign of her daughter, and her anxiety took her to her sister, Fane. I've been expecting you, she said, beckoning Lil in. Lil raised her hands in a gesture of helplessness. Tomorrow, when the warriors go, Breed will go. Fane sighed. You may be right. You know Breed can't settle, Lil. You should never have expected it. It's been almost 10 years. That should have been long enough. She should have found herself a handmaid by now. It's a small village. Difficult times. There aren't many for her to choose from. Oh, Fane, you know it's not that. She thinks she's too good for the likes of us, just as her father did. She despises us. She despises me. No. Fane hesitated, trying to find words for her partial understanding of Breed. She has no mad blood, yes, that's why she finds it so hard. She's like a river that's been dammed. She has no more conscience than a river. Conscience? She's stayed all this time, Lil. I never thought she would. What more do you want of her? I want her to stay. I want her safe. Lil shook her head. She's all I have left in the world. Fane snorted. Your world needs expanding then. She caught Lil's expression. She's a grown woman. She'll do as she pleases, just as you did at her age. But I was wrong. Fane caught at Lil's hands. How can you say that? You loved her. How could that be wrong? Lil looked at the hands about her fingers and said nothing. Breed, out in the rainy darkness, stood in the forge doorway watching. Maeve sat cross-legged beside her leader, her hair still loose on her shoulders, polishing the sword laid across her knees. The edge of her mail sleeve caught the metal with a soft ringing. Her head was bent to her work, and she was oblivious to Breed's silent watchfulness. Maeve finished one side of the sword and turned it over. Tegan reached to catch her hand. Maeve turned her head, and the curtain of her loosened hair covered her face as she leant to kiss Tegan softly, putting aside the sword. Breed turned quietly away, ashamed to be standing in the rain, watching where she had no business to watch. She walked back through the cluster of huts, noticing as she did so the silent movement of Maeve's scouts returning to the forge. Breed stood where she was, letting them see her, letting them know that she had seen and was unconcerned. In their place, she too would be checking her surroundings in preference to sleep. She watched them slip past in the darkness, listening to their breath, the slap of feet in mud, and knew abruptly that she wasn't going to sleep any time soon. She turned away, heading for the ox stall. There were horses there that would be glad to be groomed properly for once in their wretched lives. In the darkness, she could pretend they were hers, pretend they were well bred, pretend that at any moment Devnit would come and stand at her shoulder, or that tall sunlit Maeve would find her in the morning and suggest she join the warriors. Anything, anything but stay here the rest of her life.